So that would be the main thing I would say is allow for permission. You have permission to take care of yourself. You have a permission to have wants and needs. You have a permission to advocate for those. You're not asking for too much. This is our life to live, and we are responsible for our own lives.
Today on Behind the Story, the discussion is about intimacy, desire, healing, and self-trust. Not in a sensational way, but in a human one. We're not here to give prescriptions or perform expertise. We're here to slow things down, talk honestly about the parts of life many of us were never taught how to navigate. If anything in this conversation resonates, let it meet you where you are. There's no right way to listen, just an invitation to reflect, feel, and stay curious. I'm really grateful to Dr. Stanley for having this conversation, and I'm honored to share it with you. Let's get into it. Dr. Stanley, thank you for being with me here on Behind the Story. You were so gracious to respond and agree to come on and share your expertise on psychotherapy and sex therapy. So I'm really grateful and thank you for being here.
Absolutely. I'm so glad to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
Of course. So obviously I know a bit about you because in preparation I did some reading. But go ahead and introduce yourself to the audience that may not have heard of you and your work.
So, my Dr. Tiffany Stanley. I'm a psychotherapist, ASAT certified sex therapist, clinical sexologist, and so kind of cover the whole territory. I'm licensed in the United States, but also registered in the UK. So, have kind of covered territory in that way as well.
When you think about the broad field of psychology, psychotherapy, why did you choose sex therapy as your chosen path of specificity?
Well, when I went into to practice originally, I wanted to work with women, helping empowerment, things of that nature. And that kind of evolved into seeing men and women as well as couples. But inevitably, what would come up is conversations around sex. And I'd like to think that I show up with allowing space that feels safe and people can recognize I'm totally comfortable talking about it. And of course, once they feel that safety, that comfort, people start sharing. And obviously very fascinated about that subject, but it then went into more study so that I could be as educated in sexuality as well as psychology, obviously, and be able to support individuals while they, navigate their sexual lives and not just sex, but intimacy. And of course, those can overlap, but they can also be separate.
Of course, I did an interview recently with a male escort from Australia, and shout out to George. And George was telling me that in his work, a lot of it he has clients who he didn't even have sex with yet, and they've been for 2 years. And he talked about the intimacy and he talked about, what the women communicate to him about what's missing in their relationship or what they did not feel comfortable talking about prior to their interaction with him. In your work with individuals or couples, what are some of the things that they bring to you that you have to sort of set them straight on or help them work through?
Well, I think that we humans, society, so forth, have been conditioned to not talk about sex, not to identify, discuss things we want, what we need, what we desire.
Mhm.
And that often leads to people silencing themselves. And within that silence, there can also be shame, guilt, and things of that nature. And so, when individuals come to me or couples, a lot of that time together is identifying what is it that you really want, what is it that you really desire, and take the shame away, take the needing to apologize or explain. So I think that's a big piece of it. And so the male escort you were talking about, likely those women are coming to him feeling that they've had to mute their desires. There's also these myths about women's sexuality and their desire and what they want, and or say orgasm, that women, it's difficult to have orgasms and things of like, which isn't necessarily true. And
Right.
so how someone shows up in their relationship with a partner may not be the full picture about what somebody's wanting and needing. And that requires safety to be able to talk about those things with someone and be honest with their inner dialogues about sexuality and intimacy.
What are some of those misunderstandings or myths about desire and sex and emotions that you've come across in your practice?
There's lots of them. One is that desire is just meant to always be present. It's not. It's very fluid and it's very responsive, meaning if someone feels safe in their relationship, now that also means the relationship with themselves, not just with a partner.
Yes.
They need to feel safe. They need to feel seen, and
Hmm.
their level of stress and feeling overwhelmed with life, all of that plays a part in desire. But we are have been conditioned to believe that desire should just be present, and but that's not really how it works. It's so responsive. So that's one of the things. And then there's a lot of myths around, um what does it mean if I want this? Does it, we have many different desires and interests, and they don't necessarily have to be an identification of that person's person, right? And so a lot of people will, again, silence themselves on a desire that really works for them because they're afraid of judgment and things like that. So that's certainly the concept of desire. The other one is that people think, well, sex is very natural and that we should know how to do it and we should know how to do it well. Nothing can be further from the truth. The reality is
Exactly.
we might have a gist of like what goes where, if you will, but the reality of someone being fluid in their concepts of sex and sexuality and intimacy is often very learned through practice, obviously. So that is one thing that shows up a lot. People thinking, oh, I should just know how to do this. It should just come naturally. I should have desire whenever there's an opportunity. I should be ready to go and I should know exactly what I'm doing. And that's not the case. And
Agreed.
so that relationship with oneself and understanding how their body works is really important. But a lot of people just don't do that. They don't explore that for themselves before they even go into a relationship and then try to share.
Yeah. Yeah. I think you're right. And I think part of it is what you talk about earlier about shame, and how shame impacts how people respond to sex and desire. But the funny thing is, my dad used to say, you can't be shamed with a lie. If you're feeling shame, it could be something to what it is, and you need to look at it. How have you seen shame negatively impact people's ability to express themselves?
If you're feeling shame, you're not even feeling safe with yourself, right?
Right.
You have that inner judge, the inner critic. And um, so in order to kind of move through the shame, you need to be able to have honest conversations. And again, you need that sense of safety to be able to do that. So that shame keeps people stuck and in their own sort of internal struggle of, I'm not okay. My wants and needs are not okay. And that keeps people from actually experiencing the things that actually remove the shame. And again, then you think about those myths of like, this isn't okay. This is okay. This means this about you if you like this or you want this. So, yeah. So, a lot of my work is really helping people just to have honest conversations with themselves first. And then, whomever they want to share these conversations with after that.
When someone comes to you with one of these neuroses, what does the healing process, from your perspective, look like at the beginning? Like, what's that first conversation? For example, I come to you and I say, I'm shy. When I'm with a woman, I'm afraid of telling her what I want or telling her what to do. I don't know how to overcome that, Dr. Stanley. Can you help me? That first conversation with
Well, that conversation would probably also have some statements along the way of, something's wrong with me. I must be broken. Why is this difficult? And what I try to suggest is the idea of instead of saying what's wrong with me, I'm shy. What's wrong with me with that? Why do I get so nervous and uncomfortable? To instead ask themselves, what is that telling me? What is it that I might need that I need to identify for myself and bring that into these experiences, let's say with a partner. And so there's a reason for the shyness. There's a message, there's internal dialogue going on about I'm not okay, maybe I'm too much. And so then the opposite would be shy. Like I just need to, keep it on the download. And so I shift to what is this? What is your body telling you? I really do believe in that body mind connection and that we are receiving messages. When we have responses, there's something coming from that. And sometimes it's history of things that they've been told. And so we bring all of that with us. So I start with, okay, let's stop with the what's wrong with me and let's switch it to what is your body telling you? What is it that you long for that you are keeping at bay or silencing for yourself? And I think that really opens up the conversation and allows people to kind of do their own mapping of their answering their own questions of why am I shy? Why do I get nervous around a partner? And kind of just go from there.
Yeah, it seems as though people get into a survival mode and they live their life there and they do not even realize that that's where they are. They're in survival. They're not in living. And I saw a recent poll where it said that demographically younger people, they're not having sex. They're just
Right.
off on it. And it's multiple reasons, different reasons. But anecdotally, any scientific proof, my opinion is that I think people have gone into survival mode because of all sorts of different trauma and not wanting to even deal with it. So they
Hmm.
themselves, the lack of it is strength. I am strong. I am celibate. I am this. I don't think it's coming from I think it's coming from a place of lots of trauma and lots of unresolved like self hurt. And I
Hmm.
wonder what's your opinion on that? Have you noticed the same thing, or am I in my own world?
No, I'm definitely noticing that the younger crowd, if you will, are having a lot less sex than what you think they would be. You think of the teenage and the 20s and so forth. And there's lots of reasons for it. There's social media and the internet and all of that does play a part in kind of distancing people. That's one part. But I do agree with you that trauma plays a big part in keeping someone resisting vulnerability, right? So if I keep this distance and I don't allow myself to become close to somebody intimately, physically, if you will, there is a protecting of, well, then I don't have to feel what I feel about that intimacy and then question what that is all about, like the layers, if you will. And so it might look like I'm really tough and I have this resistance to these things and I don't need that. And it can actually be, I don't want to look at these scary things.
Yeah, that's what I think it is too. That's
Hmm.
what I think it is too.
Hmm.
Because if you're okay, why not take a shot? What have you
Yeah.
got to lose? You know?
Well, and trauma stays in our bodies. Even if we've forgotten the memories or portion of them, it remains in our bodies. And so we have reactions physically, the nervousness, the feeling nervous that leads to being shy. And so the idea of getting around trauma, it doesn't really work that well. It's still there until
It's
you
still
address it.
Yes, it's an energy, and that energy is a
Hmm.
blockage, and it could even be even in your nervous system. From yeah, and it negatively impacts every aspect of your life, whether or not you're conscious of it. It's still there. Let me ask you this: back into your therapist mode. I come to you and I say, I'm having trouble having my partner do what I want her to do. Um, and I'm not happy. I keep asking, and it's not happening. Like, can you help me? How can I convince her to do what I want?
Hmm. And the operative word is convince her. Okay, well, let's back up. It's important to feel validated in what you want. So this person who comes in and says, I want these things, I'm assuming that they've had conversations about it with their partner, ideally not in bed, in the bedroom, or wherever they typically have sex. That's not the best place to be talking about what you want sexually. It puts a lot of pressure. So, you know, somewhere else, go for a walk, go for a drive, talk about it in that space. And check for clarity and then be able to share. And then, of course, you have to do your own self research, but like, why do you want that? What does it mean to you? How do you feel when that's happening for you? And so, those, not just naming an activity, but like the meaning behind it. Like, it makes me feel wanted. It makes me feel powerful. It makes me feel sexy or something, right? Or connected to you. So, then your partner has a much deeper understanding of that desire and that want, as opposed to, oh, you just want me to do this activity, whatever it is, and that's me just doing something for you. No, there's actually more to it. And
Right.
so, but you have to
You
know
know,
that
like
for yourself first.
like the typical lunkhead male, I never would have thought that in the moment was not the time to ask. Like I literally was thinking, wait a minute, yeah, that's what I would ask. Hey, can you do this? Can you move here? Can you do?
Mhm.
And you're saying, no, that's not. I
I
never
mean,
would
you
have.
can only give somebody some guidance, like, oh, that feels really good. Can you do more of that? Or how about come over here? But I'm talking about those conversations about um, what's working, what's not working.
Ah, God.
And that can also include, I really want us to do these particular things. It seems like you're resistant to it, or it's not your thing, or you don't want to. And so having that outside of the bedroom allows for a conversation that isn't there isn't that pressure of, okay, when are we going to have sex now? Or, oh, you're trying to direct me in the moment instead of
Right.
just having I think it's like a heart to heart conversation. And
I
then,
get it now. Yeah.
yeah. And then being like on a walk or in the car is really great for having conversations with men because you're not face to face, you're side by side, and you can talk about it. You can have your dialogue. You can and feel it just less of the somebody's staring at me for one thing. And the research kind of goes back to if you think about the idea of the hunter in the past, right? And they would not be looking at each other having a conversation. They would be side to side and they would be looking and watching for the prey and all of that business. And that is a comfortable space. It does not at all mean that those two people are not engaged and interested in each other, what they're saying. It's just it regulates the nervous system a little bit
Hmm.
better. So
That's
just a
very
little
interesting.
tip.
No, yeah, yeah. And again, I'm thankfully not experienced any of the things I'm asking you, but I'm thinking about people that this may be their story, and I think it would be helpful to hear a professional actually answer the question rather than some rambling talking head influencer or something. But I do get what you mean from the perspective of pressure. It's not in the moment. You can have a more casual conversation,
Hmm.
feel the need to be defensive in the moment. I don't like that. I don't like that. So I get it. And it makes perfect sense. Let me ask you this question. In regards to boundaries,
Hmm.
does having boundaries deepen the connection and intimacy or weaken it?
Deepen it. Boundaries are really necessary because if you don't have boundaries and those boundaries are not identified, respected, and so forth, what often happens is resentment. And that corrodes the relationship far more than setting a boundary that is what you need and both of you honoring that boundary. So again, you have to identify it. It doesn't need it shouldn't be a mystery. You have to describe this doesn't work for me. This is my limits on this, or whatever the case is that you're setting boundaries on, but it actually is beneficial for relationships. It isn't that you go into an intimate relationship and all boundaries need to go out the window. That there are boundaries or they're self-care.
Okay. In reading a bit about you, I noticed you talked about moving from performance to presence. I think I'm remembering that properly. How can you tell which one you're operating?
Well, performance is so if you're present, you're not thinking about you might be thinking about what's next, but you're present on what you're feeling, what you're thinking, what you're seeing, and everything. All those sensations are going to be much more vivid and enjoyable. If you're in performance mode, what happens is we're up here and we're not enjoying the sensations of the experience. We're not intimately connecting and sort of dancing or flowing with that person that we're with and or with ourselves if you're self-pleasuring. So it's performance, but stress. Stress does not go well with sex.
Very true.
And
Very
then if
true.
you think about stress, then you think about safety. When there's not safety and there is stress, desire does not show up. And then you're not going to enjoy the experience the way you would if you're just completely present.
I asked that question, but I know what it meant. But I will say, I'm one of those people where I'm very self aware about everything, whether it's trauma or whatever it is. And
Mhm.
I self analyze to the ends of the earth. If I tell men this, they think, wow, that's so cool. But if I tell somebody that understands it, realize it's not. What I'm talking about was when I was 19, I dated a 39-year-old. Brilliant. I thought she set me up for the rest of my life to understand women and all of this stuff. And I realized I was doing exactly what you mentioned my entire life, performing. Because you could say a 19-year-old was probably still a child, but even though I thought I was a man. But at a very young age, I had the sense of please, perform, pleasure, not thinking about anything about me. So when I went into intimacy, it wasn't intimate. It was a performance because it was women talk about you. They don't talk about you kindly if you don't perform. So I was never what you called when described there present. It was always a performance. And it was not till later on in life where I even thought about going there. And what I realized, it's a sense of strength, not weakness, to be able to take that step
Yeah.
because it's not a comfortable feeling
Mm-hmm.
to really be present and open and to use a word that meant not like using vulnerable. So I get what you're talking about there, but it's easier said than done.
For sure. Yeah, and you need to have a sense of comfort with that person that you're with. And that starts with having comfort with yourself first. And so I can totally get why you were in the performance mode. Of course, you've got this 39-year-old woman, and you're like, I need to be like really good at this and appear to know what I'm doing. And maybe she's giving you some feedback, and you're like, okay, I'm just going to gather all this good information. But that doesn't lead you to be experiencing your own personal experience. What I
Exactly.
often tell couples is that when individuals are talking about their sex lives and such, the most ideal, most pleasurable sexual experience is often going to be when you're focused on them and you're focused on yourself. And it's this ebb and flow between the two. If you're focused solely on the other person and not yourself, you're missing out on so much sensations and pleasure and experiences and things, maybe even something new that you didn't even know you might like because you're just so like tunnel focused on that other person.
Yeah.
It needs to kind of ebb
Yeah.
and flow. It's not selfish. It's like
Self
going
aware,
through it
probably.
together.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, one of the things that I experienced as growing up is, and I didn't realize this until someone pointed it out, was I did not like to be touched by
Mm.
anybody. Like if it wasn't my dad or my brother or mom, don't touch me, don't even come close. But I didn't know that. I
Mhm.
realized that when I was taking photographs and someone pointed out to me in the photograph, why do you do that? Take a photo. I'm like, what are you talking about?
Mhm.
Look at you. You're almost boiling away from the other person. And I looked and I thought, oh crap, they're right. And then I go into my self analysis and I was like, oh, I didn't want the person to touch me. And they don't feel it. And I realized where it came from was not a place of trauma necessarily. It was something where I feel things. I know it sounds really weird. I feel things, and what I feel is not always good. So I recoil away because I don't want to feel it. So it wasn't necessarily I didn't want to be touched. It was more of I don't want to feel that negative energy that's coming
Mhm.
from a person that they don't even know that they have. And I've dealt with it, but I wonder if I came to you with that and I'm telling you my partner is saying I'm not affectionate. I'm not
Mhm.
because that's what was happening when I was younger.
Got
How
it.
would you advise me to even start the healing process
Mhm.
for that?
Well, in regards to your experience with we are all energetic beings, right? And you sound very empathetic, which means you pick up probably on people's energy and negativity and probably feel it at a very different degree than maybe other people would. Maybe it's like other person would say, you know, I get kind of a weird feeling or, they're uncomfortable to be around, but it sounds like you're kind of sensing a more an energetic level and you're protecting yourself. And that's what that quarreling is. I don't even want to have it near me. If someone were to come in to see me and say, I really struggle with touch, and well, first they may not even recognize, just like you didn't, may not recognize that that is really what's happening. Is that they're feeling a sensitivity to touch, and it looks like an avoidance of intimacy. It looks like avoidance of this person doesn't like to be affection. They don't like to touch. They don't like to receive touch. It could be that there's not a sense of safety in that relationship. That's something we
Hmm.
have to look at. We have to be honest. That can be the case. Maybe there's been hurts in the past that haven't been dealt with. Maybe they've been stuffed away. And so it doesn't feel safe for that contact. There's also individuals who have sensitivities to touch, to sound, to things like that. And that is more difficult to address if that is your nature, that sensitivity. And so, what I would probably suggest to a couple is get clear about what might be behind the scenes of that, what looks like avoidance to affection and emotional connection. If there's
Mhm.
something resolved, we need to talk about it. We need to do some healing around it. If that doesn't seem to be the case, then I would say, kind of back up and slowly move into touch, meaning there's an exercise called sensate focus. And basically what it is that the two individuals slowly, one person at a time, touches the other person. Meaning, if it's the husband's turn, he touches his wife, and there's nothing about sex about it. It is touching out of curiosity. So the other part of that is you're not trying to pleasure the other person. You are touching them for your own curiosity. And then you switch. And so then the wife would touch her husband or her partner, and she's touching him out of curiosity. Nothing sexual, nothing performance, not about trying to get him turned on or anything. What that often does is it gives that person a lot of information about how they're receiving touch, how they feel, what comes up, where they feel it in their body, where's resistance, what type of touch feels good and what type of touch feels uncomfortable. And
Mhm.
that's a good starting point to have those conversations. Um, that sort of sensory thing. Often there's something that somebody needs to talk through, a hurt, or feeling misunderstood or not seen or cared for. And then the other piece can be we need to back it up and figure out how we both need and want to be touched.
Yeah. What I learned about it, and by learning about myself, is that everybody is different based on conditioning, right? Their
Mhm.
environment, their family environment, and if you know, and I'll tell you how I grew up, being like that would sound completely contradictory because I grew up in a very loving, affectionate house with my mom and dad. It was so I was embarrassed by it with my friends. My dad was so public with it too. He didn't care where I was, where he was. He was hugging me, giving me
Love
this.
it.
My mom, my dad. So I grew up with the affection. So to come from that to not wanting people to touch me sounds completely counterintuitive. But it's because what we talked about. It was the feeling, the energy of it just was not symbiotic to me, and I realized that's what it was.
Sure.
So I use it as my guide. If I'm interacting with people and I feel that, I'm like, okay,
Mm,
repel,
trust it
repel.
and appreciate it. And I imagine if you come from this very loving, just generous with the affection, and assuming that all of that felt like good, positive, then you're already sensitive to that energy. That would even increase that sensitivity because you know very much what the others, when it feels good, feels like.
Yeah,
But that's not it.
yeah. And I'll be honest with you, Dr. Stanley, I did not like it growing up because as a child, my friends didn't have that. So I was made fun of. Why your dad always hugging
Mm,
you? So I'm like, Dad, stop. And then when I got older, I realized how lucky I actually was. So to be honest and be fair, going through it, I wasn't enjoying it and appreciating it consciously. It was not till later when I did
mhm.
realize I really was fortunate. I really was lucky. And it came full circle when my best friend said to me one time, he saw me and my dad, and he said, I wish me and my dad was like you and your dad. And
Mhm.
that's when it hit me. I was like,
Yeah,
help me to really understand my dad a bit more.
I love it.
Let me ask you this. If somebody is feeling disconnected from themselves, what's a simple shift they can make to start to bridge that
I think that a lot of times it's a lot of internal criticism. We can be so hard on ourselves. And so, shifting from curiosity, being compassionate with ourselves is a really, really important. It's hard to receive it from other people if we're not even giving it to ourselves. And so, you know, to be careful about the how much we self-attack and how much we silence ourselves. And And really, it's about having honest conversations with ourselves about what we want, what we need, and giving ourselves some compassion. Again, we can be so hard on ourselves. And, circling back to what you were saying about the friends, giving you a hard time about your family's affectionate, which of course is just beautiful and wonderful. It's an example of how influenced we can be by our peers, not just when we're teenagers, but throughout our lives. And that's often where shame comes from too, how we feel that we're perceived, right? And so we go, oh, that's not okay. Shut that down. That's not okay. Act like I don't like that. And that all comes into like the therapy room for sure.
Yeah, it's funny being an adult now. If I haven't seen my big brother for a month or so and he sees me, it's a hug and a kiss even now as adults. And I remember when I was younger, like, stop it. But it goes back to what you said. You're thinking about what other people are watching, not necessarily experience. Thankfully, I'm not like that anymore. But in my 20s and 30s, I was thinking, yeah, stop it. Don't make it public.
Yeah, but see, but you've said you've done a lot of self-reflecting, and that's the result of that kind of work that you appreciate and you receive, and just a better understanding about what things meant to you at one point, what they mean to you now.
Yeah, yeah, and it's a chain reaction because I've got a 30-year-old boy, and it hit me. I'm exactly the way with him as my dad was with me, and but the lesson is for me, I'm very conscious of it, and I ask him, "Hey, is it okay if Dad hugs you? And I want you to feel bad." And he looks at me like I'm be mad out of his head. He's like, "Dad, it's fine. What's the problem?" And he gives me a big,
Good. Yeah. Yeah.
"It's not me."
Yes. But you're asking for permission, and that permission allows him to be very comfortable in that receiving, because you've honored that respect of, I'm asking permission, and I don't want you to feel uncomfortable, embarrassed, and I love that.
Let me ask you a question. And I'm asking not from a perspective of asking you to be judgmental in any way, but just your viewpoint. We live in a time where there's lots of alternative lifestyles. And I'll be honest, some of the acronyms I can't even keep up with. I'm just going to be honest about it. Yeah, there's the polys and ethically non-monogamous and different things. That's what George, the escort from Australia, described himself prior to being an escort. He was an ethically non-monogamous is how he
Mm-hmm.
described it. Do you see any way where those types of lifestyles negatively impact intimacy and emotional connection between people?
I mean, I've definitely worked with individuals who are considering having open relationships, non monogamous relationships, polyamorous, and all of those kinds of things. I think that where the harm comes is, or the potential for like negatively influencing relationships, is when there's not complete clarity and honesty about the expectations. That is often when people will come back or will come to me because they've tried it and did not go well, because they did not set expectations. There was not full transparency. I think if that form of relationship is what works for you, believe it works for you, and you've done all the diligence of like being really clear with yourself. It's like you were saying earlier, that sort of avoidance of, I'm not going to have intimacy because, I don't want to look at my traumas. You can also have alternative relationships, because the concept of a traditional relationship might feel challenging. And so you have to be honest with yourself. You have to really be clear about why this is what you're pursuing, what about it is fits for you, and clear expectations. I don't think that they're bad or wrong. I think they work well for lots of people. Unfortunately, a lot of times couples, especially couples, will choose to try that because they're not addressing what's going on in their relationship. This
Right.
isn't working here. How about we bring somebody else in? How about we open the relationship, and then everybody gets their needs met? But it does not address the initial issues, if you will, that may have led to thinking that was a good idea. So there's just, I'm giving you lots of answers, but the real answer is there's so many variations, and we just have to be really honest with ourselves about the whys.
Yeah, and I think the danger of someone looking from the outside is you project, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because one of the questions I asked him, George, is he because the way he was describing his relationship with his clients,
Hmm.
it was warm and caring and intimate and empathetic and all the positive things you would think about in a relationship.
Hmm.
How do you not get caught up? Just dead inside, you know? And he said, no, no, I'm human. I do feel something and have different things, feelings and relationships with them. And my thought process was, well, then that's that's insanity. But then how he brought it home for him, he said, I always remember and remind them, if you were not paying me, I would not. So then my question was, are you just living a superficial existence as far as the emotional connections that you're talking about? Is it not real? So when you're talking to somebody, like say, for example, can you determine when somebody is being superficial with their emotions, where maybe they're talking to you about how connected they feel with their partner and how great it is, but you're listening and going, this is superficial? Have you come across that?
Oh, well, yeah, I think I have a really good sense of intuition of what is what I'm seeing and what I'm feeling. And I just ask curious questions. People get there eventually. And so I think sometimes people are so afraid to like acknowledge that they're not happy, or that the way that it's been things have been arranged for so long, maybe it kind of evolved this way, but it never got checked, and I do think that in relationships we have to have assessments periodically throughout the entirety the journey of our relationship, of like, is this working? What do we need to change? Because we change as humans.
Yes.
So that person might come in and think, I need to hold this front. I'm telling myself that I'm just so close and so intimate, but I'm picking up that's not necessarily the case. I don't put them on the, court stand or something and interrogate them, but I think that people eventually will, what I see is that people get comfortable and then they feel safe to kind of share a little bit more insight. And I just come from a curious place. I just want to like, and I do often kind of like work like the investigator of like, so why this? And then how did that come together? And how did, not
Yeah.
interrogating, but just really
Right.
curious. So,
Well, let me ask you this. We've only been talking for about 30 minutes, and you are a very pleasant person. I can't picture you being tough. But how would you handle it if somebody is just BSing you? You know what they're talking about is just rubbish, and they're just BSing you. How? I can't picture you calling somebody out. I'm sorry. You just seem so pleasant. Well, what does that look like?
it happens. It's called BS. I think it is jarring. I mean, I think they're like, whoa, But I think by that point, if I'm working with someone and I'm just not buying it, I would like to think that I presented it in a very kind way, and I'm not judging. I'm just my spidey sense is saying I'm not buying it. And so let's talk about that a little bit more. And they usually go on explaining, or like, it's okay. That's the other thing, is the assurance of like, it is okay for you to feel whatever you're feeling. The I want the real stuff. And so that's what I present. But yeah.
Yeah. And I suppose you can't help them unless they give you the real stuff.
Yeah.
So it's in their best interest to not BS you.
And I have clients who say that too. They'll go, I mean, I'm wasting my money if I'm going to just tell you, stuff that's not true, or so I'm just going to lay it out. I'm like, great, let's go for it. And so, yeah, it's kind of like George saying, I'm here, you are paying me. Yes, I do care, but also I want you to get your money's worth. Let's do the work. And so,
When you reflect back on your career journey as a clinician and an author, and even as a woman, I'm curious if you want to share what has your work with people taught you about you?
You put me on the spot. Well, that I just have, for one thing, I have such a curiosity and fascination for the human, and so much like there's so many types of people, and we all have so many experiences, and it's just all about being real and human. And I think that that gives me the ability to kind of look at my own stuff and have compassion and be curious and not go into immediate blame for things and go, well, there's lots of things that add up to wherever you get to, right? And so and then also I feel like there's the validation of like I am a good person and I love people and I show up and I'm genuine, and it's nice to know that that is like people feel that gives me so much joy.
Has there been a session where it triggered something in you that you went off and took a look at personally and was able to bring back the insight to help the person?
That definitely happens. Yeah. Yeah, I think that's the one of the really important things as a therapist, to have your own therapist, or if not your, I mean, I absolutely think you need to have your own therapist, but in addition to that, you can also have like a consulting group that you get together with other therapists and talk about if you were triggered, or if there was some transference of something, that kind of thing, to kind of make sense of it. And it can often, like when you get triggered by something that someone's sharing, maybe you've had a similar experience, it's the body saying, it's a message. There's some work to do here. There's always work to do, but it gives you a little bit more of a compass to, ooh, that really kind of got to me. I think I need to go dive in and figure what that was about and do my own personal work. And that's a gift too, as being working with individuals to go, okay, I got some work to do over here. We're human, therapists are human too.
Absolutely. As we wrap up, I wonder if there was one thing that you wished people that you could impart onto people that you wish that they would allow themselves to do or give themselves permission to do without shame or without what would that be?
Well, you named it right there, is the permission. I think that's what a lot of people even come to therapy for, is they're craving permission to rest. They're craving permission to have their needs met. Rest is a big one. And I don't mean just like sleep. I mean to just find some peace and that they're okay. It. So that would be the main thing I would say, is allow for permission. You have permission to take care of yourself. You have a permission to have wants and needs. You have a permission to advocate for those. You're not asking for too much. This is our life to live, and we are responsible for our own lives. And so it's about giving ourselves permission to thrive in the lives that we're responsible for.
Yeah. Well, Dr. Stunning, we'll leave it there, but any final words before we go?
Well, I just appreciate your time. Thank you so much. And I hope that the listeners got some goodies out of this and found it to be helpful. And yeah, thank you for your time. It's been wonderful.
Thank you so much. Best of luck to you.
You too.
Behind the story.